Artifacts greater than invoke name equals. Artifacts greater than parameter name equals command greater than create parameter. Parameter name equals type. Text markdown parameter greater than parameter name equals ID HFY underscore story underscore part 5. Parameter greater than parameter name equals title part 5. The truth unveiled parameter. Parameter name equals content. Elena leaned against the corroded metal wall and closed her eyes. The effort of fighting the Dominion soldiers had drained more energy from her than she wanted to admit. Jake watched her carefully as they hid in the ruins of an old mining platform, waiting for the alien search teams to pass. "Tell me about the Storm of Terror," Jake said quietly. "I want to know who you really are." Elena opened her eyes and looked at him. In the dim light filtering through the toxic clouds, she looked older than her years. There were lines around her eyes that spoke of battles fought and friends lost. "The Storm of Terror was a mistake," Elena said. "A group of scientists thought they could create the perfect soldier to fight the Dominion. They were wrong." Jake settled down beside her and checked his rifle. The approaching Dominion aircraft were still searching the area, but they had not found their hiding spot yet. "What kind of mistake?" "Have you ever heard of Project Thunder?" Elena asked. Jake shook his head. Most military projects were classified above his security level. 50 years ago, when the Dominion first started expanding into human space, our leaders panicked. We were losing every battle. Our weapons were primitive compared to theirs, and our tactics were useless against their superior technology. Someone decided that we needed super soldiers to even the odds. Elena stood up and walked to the broken window. Outside, the alien searchlights swept across the poisonous landscape like the eyes of hunting predators. They took volunteers from elite military units and enhanced them using alien technology that we had captured. The process was supposed to make us faster, stronger, and smarter than normal humans. It worked, but there were side effects that nobody anticipated. Jake thought about the way Elena had moved during the battle. No normal human could fight like that, even with the best training in the galaxy. What kind of side effects? The enhancements changed us on a genetic level. We could process information faster than computers and react to threats before they fully developed. Our strength and speed increased beyond anything previously thought possible. But the most important change was psychological. Elena turned back to face him, and Jake saw sadness in her eyes. We stopped feeling human. The enhancements made us so different from normal people that we began to think of ourselves as a separate species. We were warriors first and everything else second. "How many of you were there?" Jake asked. 12 in the first group. I was the youngest at 19 years old. We called ourselves the Thunder Guard, and for 10 years we were the most effective fighting force humanity had ever created. We won battles that should have been impossible and turned the tide of the war against the Dominion. Jake tried to imagine what it would be like to have that kind of power and responsibility at such a young age. What happened to the others? Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "They are all dead. Killed in the Battle of Kepler Station 3 years ago." What was Kepler Station? A research facility on the edge of human space. The Dominion had developed a new bioweapon that could kill enhanced humans like us. Intelligence said they were planning to mass produce it and use it against all human forces. High Command ordered us to destroy the facility before they could complete their work. Elena sat back down, and Jake could see that the memories were painful for her. We thought it would be a simple mission. Infiltrate the station, disable the weapon, and escape before Dominion reinforcements arrived. We had done similar operations dozens of times before, but something went wrong. Everything went wrong. The intelligence was incomplete. There were 3 times as many defenders as we expected, and they knew we were coming. Worse than that, they had already weaponized their bioagent and deployed it as soon as we entered the facility. Jake watched Elena's face as she relived the terrible memories. The weapon was designed specifically to target our enhanced genetics. It attacked our nervous systems and shut down the modifications that made us superhuman. My teammates started collapsing within minutes of exposure, but you survived. I was in a different section of the station when the weapon was released. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late to help them. I tried to reach Marcus and Sarah, but the bioagent had already killed them. I found their bodies in the main laboratory along with the rest of my team. Elena's voice broke slightly, and Jake realized that she was still grieving for her lost friends. I managed to destroy the weapon facility, but not before the bioagent infected me too. I should have died with the others, but my body fought off the worst effects. Instead of killing me quickly, it has been killing me slowly ever since. Jake began to understand why Elena had been hiding on this poisonous planet. You came here to die. I came here to disappear. Every time I use my enhanced abilities, the bioweapon in my system does more damage. Eventually, it will shut down my heart or my brain, and that will be the end of the storm of Terra. I thought Viridian Prime would be a good place to wait for that to happen. But you discovered that the Dominion was building another weapon here. Elena nodded. I intercepted their communications by accident while I was setting up my shelter. They are calling it the Planet Killer, and from what I could understand, it is designed to strip the atmosphere from inhabited worlds. One shot from that weapon could kill billions of people. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the toxic atmosphere. How close are they to completing it? Very close. Maybe days or weeks at most. I tried to get closer to their facility to gather more intelligence, but that was when they shot down my transport. I have been running from their patrols ever since, until I found you. Until you saved my life, Elena corrected, and reminded me that some things are worth fighting for, even when you know it will probably kill you. The sound of Dominion aircraft faded into the distance, and Jake realized that the immediate search had moved on. They would have a few hours of safety before the next patrol arrived. What do we do now? Jake asked. Elena stood up and began checking her equipment. We finished what I came here to do. The Planet Killer cannot be allowed to become operational. Too many innocent people will die if we fail. The two of us against an entire Dominion facility. Those are not good odds. Elena looked at him with the fierce determination that had made her a legend among human forces. I am not planning to survive this mission, Jake. The bioweapon will kill me whether I fight or not. At least this way, my death will mean something. Jake thought about everything Elena had told him. She was dying slowly from an alien poison and had spent 3 years blaming herself for the deaths of her team. She had come to this hostile planet to die alone and forgotten. But fate had brought them together and given her one last chance to strike back at the enemies of humanity. You're not going alone, Jake said firmly. Marines do not abandon their allies, and they do not run from impossible missions. If you are going to attack that facility, then I am going with you. Elena stared at him in surprise. You could wait for rescue. Your people will find you eventually, and you could live a normal life. Why would you throw that away to help someone you barely know? Jake smiled and checked his rifle one more time. Because that is what humans do. We stand together against the darkness, and we protect each other no matter the cost. Besides, someone needs to watch your back while you save the galaxy. For the first time since he had known her, Elena laughed. It was a real laugh full of warmth and genuine amusement. I had forgotten what it was like to have hope. Thank you for reminding me. Outside, the toxic storms continued to rage, but inside their shelter, 2 humans prepared to attempt the impossible. They would infiltrate the most heavily defended Dominion facility in the sector and destroy a weapon that could end human civilization. The odds were against them, but they would face those odds together. Parameter, Invoke, Artifacts. I've written part 5 of the story, which reveals Elena's full backstory as part of Project Thunder and the tragic loss of her team at Kepler Station. The story explains her enhanced abilities, the bioweapon slowly killing her, and her discovery of the Planet Killer weapon on Viridian Prime. This part maintains a simple English and third-person narrative style while deepening the emotional connection between Jake and Elena as they prepare for their final mission together. The part is approximately 1,400 words and flows naturally without chapter. Artifacts greater than invoke name equals artifacts greater than parameter name equals command greater than create parameter. Parameter name equals type, text markdown. Parameter greater than parameter name equals ID HFY underscore story underscore part 4. Parameter greater than parameter name equals title, part 4, revelations under fire parameter. Parameter name equals content. The Dominion forces found them at sunset. Jake and Lisa had been moving through the toxic swamps for hours, trying to stay ahead of their pursuers when the aliens finally caught up. There was nowhere left to run. Jake counted 12 Dominion soldiers emerging from the poisonous mist around them. They moved in perfect formation with their energy weapons trained on the two humans. Their black armor gleamed weightily in the fading light, and their alien faces were hidden behind reflective visors. "Surrender now, and your death will be quick," the lead soldier said in accented but understandable human language. "Continue to resist, and we will make you suffer." Jake raised his rifle, knowing it was useless against their superior numbers and equipment. He had fought Dominion forces before and knew that human weapons barely scratched their advanced armor. But he would not go down without a fight. Lisa stepped forward, and Jake was surprised to see that she looked calm. There was no fear in her eyes anymore. Instead, she looked like someone who had finally stopped running and was ready to face whatever came next. "You have been hunting me for 3 years," Lisa said to the aliens. "Why do you not just leave me alone? I am no threat to your empire." The lead soldier tilted his head in what might have been amusement. "You are the Storm of Terra. You have killed thousands of our warriors and destroyed dozens of our ships. As long as you live, you will always be a threat." Jake stared at Lisa in shock. The Storm of Terra was a legend among human forces. A super soldier who could fight entire armies single-handed and had turned the tide of a dozen major battles against the Dominion. Everyone knew the stories, but most people thought they were just propaganda. "That was a long time ago," Lisa said quietly. "That person is dead." "We shall see," the alien replied and raised his weapon. What happened next was impossible to believe. Lisa moved faster than Jake's eyes could follow. One moment she was standing beside him, and the next moment she was among the alien soldiers. Like a force of nature unleashed, her first target never had time to fire his weapon. Lisa twisted away from his energy beam and struck him in the throat with her bare hand. The impact sent the armored soldier flying backward into an acid pool, where he sank beneath the bubbling surface. 2 more aliens fired at her, but she was already moving. She rolled under their shots and came up with a piece of broken metal that she hurled like a spear. It punched through the first soldier's armor and dropped him instantly. The second soldier tried to track her movement, but she was behind him before he could turn around. Her kick shattered his helmet, and he collapsed. Jake watched in amazement as Lisa fought with skills that seemed beyond human capability. She anticipated every attack and moved like she could see the future. Her strikes were precise and devastating. She used the environment as a weapon, turning the poisonous swamp itself against her enemies. When one soldier tried to flank her, she grabbed a handful of acid and threw it at his visor. The chemical ate through the protective material, and he screamed as it reached his eyes. Another soldier charged her with a vibro blade, but she caught his wrist and used his own momentum to drive the weapon into his chest. The remaining soldiers tried to surround her, but Lisa seemed to be everywhere at once. She moved between them, like smoke, never staying in one place long enough for them to target her effectively. She broke weapons with her bare hands and turned their own equipment against them. Jake tried to help, but quickly realized that he would only get in her way. Lisa was fighting on a level that was far beyond normal human ability. She was faster, stronger, and more skilled than anyone he had ever seen. The stories about the Storm of Terror had not been exaggerated. After all, the battle lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, all 12 Dominion soldiers lay dead or dying in the toxic swamp. Lisa stood in the middle of the carnage, breathing heavily, but otherwise unharmed. Her eyes were glowing with a faint inner light that made Jake step backward involuntarily. Then she collapsed. Jake caught her before she hit the ground and was shocked by how light she felt. It was as if the incredible display of combat ability had drained something vital from her body. Her skin was pale and her breathing was shallow. "Lisa," Jake said urgently, "are you all right?" She opened her eyes and the strange glow was gone. "My name is not Lisa," she whispered. "It is Elena Vasquez." Jake helped her sit up against a twisted tree trunk. "The storm of Terra. I should have known. The story said you disappeared 3 years ago after the Battle of Kepler Station." "I did not disappear," Elena said weakly. "I ran away. My entire team was killed because of my arrogance, and I could not face the consequences of my failure." Jake looked around at the dead aliens and then back at Elena. "This does not look like failure to me. You just defeated 12 enemy soldiers with your bare hands." "At what cost?" Elena asked. "Using my abilities like that is killing me. The bioweapon they use on Kepler Station damaged my enhanced physiology. Every time I fight, it gets worse." Jake began to understand why Elena had been hiding on this poisonous planet. She was not just running from the Dominion. She was running from herself and the knowledge that her powers were slowly destroying her. "Why were you really on Viridian?" "Prime," Jake asked. "It was not for botanical research." Elena looked up at the alien sky where more Dominion ships were beginning to appear. The soldiers they had killed must have sent a signal before the battle started. Soon this place would be swarming with enemy forces. "Intelligence reports suggested that the Dominion was building something here," Elena said. "A weapon that could destroy entire planets. I came to investigate, but the bioweapon in my system made me weak. I barely escaped my ship before it was shot down. And then I found you in the acid pool. Yes, you saved my life when you had no idea who I was or what I had done. You risked everything for a stranger and asked for nothing in return." Jake helped Elena to her feet. She was still weak, but seemed to be recovering some of her strength. "That is what humans do. We help each other because it is the right thing to do." Elena studied his face in the dim light. "I have spent 3 years believing that I was a monster, that my abilities made me less human somehow. But you showed me that humanity is not about what powers you have. It is about the choices you make." The sound of approaching aircraft interrupted their conversation. More Dominion forces were coming, and they would arrive within minutes. Jake and Elena had to move again, but this time Jake understood what they were really facing. "The weapon," Jake said. "Do you know where it is?" Elena nodded. "About 50 kilometers north of here. A massive facility built into the mountains. If they complete it, they will be able to destroy every human colony in this sector." Jake checked his rifle and counted his remaining ammunition. It was not much, but it would have to be enough. Then we need to stop them. "We?" Elena asked in surprise. "I am a Marine," Jake said simply. "Protecting humanity is my job. Whether you are Elena Vasquez or the Storm of Terra or just Lisa the botanist, you are still human, and that means I will fight beside you." Elena smiled for the first time since he had known her. It was a real smile that reached her eyes and made her look younger. "Thank you, Jake Martinez. I had forgotten what it felt like to have someone believe in me." The Dominion ships were getting closer, but Jake was no longer afraid. He was fighting alongside a legend, and together they would find a way to stop the alien weapon before it could be used against innocent people. That was what humans did when their backs were against the wall. They fought for each other, and they never gave up. Parameter, Invoke, Artifacts. I've written part 4 of the story, which reveals Lisa's true identity as Elena Vasquez, the Storm of Terra, during an intense battle scene. The story maintains the simple English and third person. narrative style while showing Elena's incredible combat abilities and establishing her mission to stop a Dominion super weapon. This part is approximately 1,400 words and flows naturally, while building the partnership between Jake and Elena for the challenges ahead. Artifacts greater than invoke name equals. Artifacts greater than parameter name equals command greater than create parameter. Parameter name equals type, text, markdown, parameter greater than parameter name equals ID HFY underscore story underscore part 3. Parameter greater than parameter name equals title, part 3. The hunt begins, parameter. Name equals content. The third morning brought with it a sound that made Jake's blood run cold. It was the distant whine of alien engines cutting through the toxic atmosphere of Viridian Prime. He grabbed his binoculars and crawled to the broken window of their shelter. 3 sleek black ships moved across the poisonous sky like hunting birds. They were not human designs. The hull shapes were too smooth, and the engine signatures were wrong. Jake had seen ships like these before in intelligence briefings. They belonged to the Dominion. "Lisa," Jake whispered urgently, "we have company." She was beside him in seconds, moving with a speed that surprised him again. She took one look at the alien ships, and her face went pale. "Dominion scouts," she said quietly. "They are searching for something." "How do you know what they are?" Jake asked. Botanists do not usually study alien military vessels. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "I told you I grew up on a frontier world. You learn to recognize threats when your survival depends on it." The ship circled overhead in a search pattern. Jake watched them through his binoculars and saw energy beams scanning the ground below. They were looking for something specific, and they were being very thorough about it. "What would the Dominion want on this planet?" Jake asked. "There are no strategic resources here, just poison and death." "Maybe they are looking for survivors from the crashes," Lisa suggested, but her voice sounded uncertain. Jake studied her face and saw fear there. Not the normal fear of being discovered by enemy forces, but something deeper. She looked like someone who had been running for a long time and had just realized that her pursuers had found her trail. "Lisa," Jake said carefully, "is there something you need to tell me? Something about why you are really here?" Before she could answer, the communication system crackled to life. Jake's distress beacon had finally reached human forces, and they were responding. "This is Captain Rick Barnes of the 4th Marine Battalion," came the voice through the static. "We have received your distress signal, Corporal Martinez. Can you confirm your status?" Jake grabbed the radio transmitter. "Captain, this is Corporal Martinez. I am alive and have one civilian survivor with me. We are holed up in an abandoned research station approximately 15 kilometers southeast of my original crash site. Copy that, Corporal. We are dispatching a rescue team, but it will take time to reach you through the toxic terrain. Can you hold your position for 48 hours? Affirmative, sir. We have supplies and shelter. Be advised, Corporal, we have detected Dominion activity in your sector. Exercise extreme caution and avoid contact if possible." The transmission ended, and Jake looked at Lisa. The alien ships were still circling overhead, and now he knew they were not just random patrols. The Dominion was actively hunting in this area at the same time that human rescue forces were trying to reach them. "We need to move," Lisa said suddenly. "They will find us if we stay here. The rescue team will expect us to be at these coordinates." Jake argued. "If we leave, they might not be able to locate us. If we stay, the Dominion will kill us both before the rescue team arrives." Lisa was already gathering her equipment and preparing to leave. Jake watched her move with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. She was not panicking or making hasty decisions. She was executing a plan that she had clearly thought through in advance. "How do you know so much about Dominion tactics?" Jake asked as he reluctantly started packing his own gear. "I have been studying them longer than you think," Lisa said. Then she seemed to realize what she had revealed and quickly added, as part of my research into their environmental impact on colonized worlds. Jake decided not to push the issue. They had bigger problems to worry about. He reprogrammed his emergency beacon to broadcast a mobile signal that would let the rescue team track their movement. Then they sealed up the shelter and prepared to venture back into the toxic swamps. Lisa led the way through the poisonous landscape. She moved with a confidence that bordered on the supernatural. She seemed to know exactly where every acid pool was located and which paths would provide the best cover from aerial surveillance. When Jake asked her about it, she claimed that her botanical surveys had taught her to read the terrain. They had been traveling for 2 hours when the first Dominion ground units appeared. Jake spotted them through his binoculars, moving in a standard search formation across the swampland. The aliens wore environmental suits that protected them from the toxic atmosphere and carried energy weapons that could cut through armor like paper. 6 hostiles moving toward our old position, Jake reported quietly. They will discover that we have moved within the hour. Lisa nodded and pointed toward a cluster of twisted metal that had once been some kind of industrial facility. We can hide there until they pass. They made their way to the ruins and found a hiding spot among the corroded machinery. Jake watched through a gap in the metal as the Dominion soldiers searched the area where their shelter had been. The aliens moved with military precision and used advanced scanning equipment to examine every surface. One of the soldiers found traces of their presence and began tracking their path through the swamp. Jake realized that they would be discovered within minutes unless they found a way to throw off their pursuers. We need a distraction, Jake whispered. Something to make them look in the wrong direction. Lisa studied the approaching soldiers and then looked at the industrial ruins around them. I have an idea. Can you create an explosion using your military equipment? Jake checked his demolition supplies and found enough plastic explosive to bring down part of the ruined structure. Yes, but it will bring every Dominion soldier in the area down on us. Not if we do it right. Set the charges on the far side of the ruins. When they explode, the soldiers will think we are hiding there and search in that direction. Meanwhile, we slip away through the acid pools. They will not expect us to cross. It was a risky plan, but Jake could not think of a better option. He placed the charges and set a timer for 10 minutes. Then they moved to the edge of the ruins and prepared to make their escape. The explosion lit up the toxic sky like artificial lightning. Twisted metal flew in every direction and created a cloud of debris that blocked the alien scanners. The Dominion soldiers immediately moved toward the blast site, expecting to find their targets in the wreckage. Lisa and Jake ran in the opposite direction toward a series of acid pools that would mask their heat signatures. Jake followed Lisa as she led them through passages between the deadly pools that seemed impossible for any normal person to navigate safely. How do you know these paths exist? Jake shouted over the sound of pursuit behind them. I have been here before, Lisa admitted as they splashed through shallow acid that ate at their protective suits. Not as a botanist. Before Jake could ask, what she meant, they reached temporary safety on the far side of the acid field. Behind them, the Dominion soldiers had discovered that the explosion was a diversion and were spreading out to search the entire area. Jake looked at Lisa and realized that everything he thought he knew about her was wrong. She was not a simple botanist who had been unlucky enough to crash on a hostile planet. She was someone the Dominion was actively hunting, and she had skills that no civilian should possess. Who are you really? Jake demanded as they caught their breath in the shelter of some crystalline formations. Lisa looked back at the searching aliens, and then at Jake. Someone who's been running from them for a very long time. Someone who hoped she could disappear on this poisonous world, but discovered that you cannot hide from the past forever. The hunt had begun, and Jake realized that he was no longer just trying to survive until rescue arrived. He was protecting someone that the most dangerous aliens in the galaxy wanted to capture or kill, and he still did not know why. Parameter, invoke, artifacts. I've written part 3 of the story, which introduces the Dominion alien forces hunting Lisa and reveals more about her mysterious past. The story maintains a simple English and third-person narrative style while building tension and action. Jake begins to realize that Lisa is not who she claims to be, and they must work together to evade the alien hunters while waiting for human rescue forces. The part is approximately 1,400 words and flows naturally without chapter breaks or numbered sections. Artifacts greater than invoke name equals. Artifacts greater than parameter name equals command greater than create parameter. Parameter name equals type text markdown. Parameter greater than parameter name equals ID HFY underscore story underscore part 2. Parameter greater than parameter name equals title. Part 2. Unlikely companions parameter. Parameter name equals content. Jake woke up to the sound of movement in the abandoned research station. His hand went to his rifle automatically before he remembered where he was. Lisa was sitting near the broken window looking out at the toxic swamps. The morning light filtered through the poisonous atmosphere and cast everything in a sickly green glow. "How are you feeling?" Jake asked, as he sat up and stretched his sore muscles. "Better," Lisa said without turning around. "The burns are healing faster than I expected. Thank you for the medical supplies." Jake looked at her bandages and was surprised to see that she was right. The chemical burns that had looked serious yesterday were already starting to fade. Her skin looked healthier, and she moved without the pain that had slowed her down before. "That is unusual," Jake said. "Chemical burns usually take weeks to heal properly." Lisa turned to face him and smiled. "I have always been a fast healer. My grandmother used to say I had good genes." Jake accepted the explanation but made a mental note of it. In his experience, people did not recover from acid burns overnight. He checked his communication equipment and found that his distress signal was still broadcasting. Somewhere out there, his command was looking for him. "Tell me about your research," Jake said as he opened a package of military rations for breakfast. "What kind of plants were you studying when you crashed?" Lisa accepted half of his food and ate it slowly. "I was documenting the local flora for the Colonial Survey. Viridian Prime has some unique species that might have medical applications. The plants here have adapted to survive in the toxic environment." She pointed to a cluster of silver plants growing near their shelter. Those ones filter poison from the soil and convert it to harmless compounds. The process they use could help Youths develop better water purification systems for other colonies. Jake looked at the plants with new interest. "How do you know so much about them?" "Most botanists need equipment and time to study how plants work." "I have been studying this planet for months," Lisa said quickly. "I read every research paper and survey report before I came here. When you love your work, you tend to remember everything about it." Something in her voice made Jake think she was not telling him the whole truth, but he did not push her. Everyone had secrets, and Lisa had already been through enough trauma. He would give her time to trust him if she wanted to share more. They spent the morning organizing their supplies and making plans. Jake estimated that rescue would take at least 2 days to reach them. The toxic atmosphere made flying dangerous, and ground vehicles could not travel through the acid pools. They would have to wait and hope that their shelter held up. Around noon, Jake noticed something strange. The electromagnetic readings on his suit computer were spiking every few minutes. The energy signatures looked like nothing he had seen before. They were too regular to be natural phenomena, but too powerful to be coming from their small shelter. "Are you getting energy readings on your equipment?" Jake asked Lisa. She looked at her wrist computer and shrugged. "Just the usual electromagnetic storms. This planet has an active core that generates a lot of interference. It makes communication difficult." Jake accepted her explanation but kept watching his readings. The spikes were getting stronger, and they seemed to be centered on their location. He decided to keep monitoring the situation. In the afternoon, Lisa offered to help him scout the area around their shelter. Jake was reluctant to let her come along because of her injuries, but she insisted that she felt fine. They put on breathing masks and went outside to explore. Lisa moved through the dangerous terrain with surprising confidence. She seemed to know exactly where to step to avoid the worst acid pools and which plants were safe to touch. When Jake asked her about it, she said that her research had taught her to read the environmental signs. They found the wreckage of her transport about a kilometer away. Jake examined the crash site and found it strange. The debris pattern looked wrong for a normal crash. It was as if the ship had been destroyed by weapons fire rather than mechanical failure. He kept his observations to himself, but made another mental note. "Did you see what caused your crash?" Jake asked as they walked back to the shelter. "I think it was engine failure," Lisa said. "Everything happened so fast. One moment we were flying normally, and the next moment alarms were going off everywhere." Jake nodded, but he had seen enough crash sites to know the difference between mechanical failure and combat damage. Someone had shot down Lisa's transport. The question was who and why. That evening they sat in their shelter, sharing another meal of military rations. Lisa asked Jake about his life as a Marine, and he told her stories about his training and deployments. She listened with interest and asked intelligent questions about military tactics and equipment. "You know a lot about military operations for a botanist," Jake observed. "I grew up on a frontier world," Lisa said. "Everyone learns basic combat skills when you live on the edge of human space. Pirates and raiders are always a threat." Jake accepted this explanation too, but he was starting to see a pattern. Lisa had an answer for everything, and all of her answers were reasonable. Too reasonable. It was as if she had prepared explanations for any questions someone might ask. As night fell, Jake worked on his equipment while Lisa rested. He managed to boost the power on his communication system and sent out a stronger distress signal. He also included a request for information about any other crashes or missing persons in their area. While he worked, Jake watched Lisa out of the corner of his eye. She was sitting perfectly still with her eyes closed, but something about her posture suggested that she was not really sleeping. She looked more like a guard on watch duty than a resting civilian. Around midnight, Jake was woken up by a sound outside their shelter. It was a low humming noise that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the window, but could not see anything in the darkness. Lisa was already awake and standing by the door. "What is it?" she whispered. "I do not know," Jake said. "Something is out there." They listened for several minutes, but the sound faded away. Jake checked his energy readings and saw that they had spiked again during the disturbance. Whatever was causing the electromagnetic interference was getting closer. "Could be another ship," Jake said hopefully. "Maybe rescue found us faster than expected?" "Maybe," Lisa agreed, but she did not sound convinced. They took turns standing watch for the rest of the night. Jake noticed that during her shifts, Lisa barely moved and seemed to be listening to sounds that he could not hear. Her reflexes were faster than normal, and she reacted to things before he was aware of them. By morning, Jake was starting to realize that Lisa Kane was not the simple botanist she claimed to be. Her knowledge was too broad, her recovery too fast, and her instincts too sharp. She was hiding something important, and Jake was beginning to think that her secrets might be the key to their survival on this deadly world. He decided to keep watching and waiting. Eventually, Lisa would reveal who she really was. Until then, he would protect her as he had promised, because that was what humans did for each other even when they did not understand the whole truth. Parameter, invoke, artifacts. I've written Part 2 of the story, continuing Jake and Lisa's time together in the research station. This part focuses on building suspicion about Lisa's true identity while maintaining the simple English and third-person narrative style you requested. The story introduces mysterious elements like her unusually fast healing, extensive knowledge, and strange energy readings, while keeping the flow natural and engaging at approximately 1,400 words. Artifacts greater than invoke name equals. Artifacts greater than parameter name equals command greater than create parameter. Parameter name equals type. Text markdown parameter greater than Parameter name equals ID HFY underscore story underscore part 1. Parameter greater than parameter name equals title part 1. The rescue parameter. Parameter name equals content. The transport ship shook like a dying animal as it fell through the toxic clouds of Iridium Prime. Jake Martinez gripped his seat harness and watched the warning lights flash red across the cabin. The pilot was shouting something over the comm system, but the words were lost in the screaming metal and electrical failures. Jake looked around at his squad members. Sergeant Pete Williams was checking his rifle for the third time. Private Amy Foster stared out the small window at the green and yellow swirls of poisonous gas below them. Corporal Ben Davis was throwing up into a sick bag. They had been through drops before, but this one felt different. The ship was not just descending anymore. It was falling. The impact came without warning. One moment they were falling through the clouds, and the next moment Jake was waking up in darkness. His head hurt and something warm was running down his face. Blood. He tried to move and felt sharp pain in his left shoulder. The harness was cutting into his chest. He fumbled for the release button and dropped to the floor of the overturned cabin. The smell hit him first. Acid and rot and something that made his nose burn. He pulled out his emergency light and looked around. The cabin was empty except for scattered equipment and pieces of metal. There were holes in the walls where the toxic atmosphere was leaking. His squad was gone. The pilot was gone. Everyone was gone except him. Jake checked his suit seals and put on his breathing mask. The suit computer showed yellow warnings about atmospheric contamination, but the filters were still working. He had maybe 6 hours of clean air if he was careful. He grabbed his rifle and what supplies he could find and climbed out through a hole in the hull. The world outside was like a nightmare painted in green and yellow. Pools of bubbling liquid stretched in every direction. Strange plants with thorns like knives grew from the poisonous soil. The air shimmered with heat and chemical fumes. In the distance, he could see the twisted remains of other crashed ships. This was where ships came to die. Jake activated his emergency beacon and started walking. His boots splashed through shallow pools of acid that aided the protective coating. Every step was a risk, but staying with the wreck was death. The beacon would bring rescue eventually, but only if he could stay alive long enough for them to find him. He had been walking for 2 hours when he heard the sound. At first, he thought it was another animal making noise in the swamp. Then he realized it was a voice. Someone was calling for help. Jake followed the sound through a maze of twisted metal and poisonous plants. The voice was getting weaker. He climbed over a fallen tree that looked like it was made of glass and saw her. She was trapped in a pool of yellow liquid that was eating through her clothes. Her dark hair was matted with sweat and chemicals. She was maybe 25 years old, with brown eyes that looked up at him with desperate hope. She wore the simple work clothes of a colonist, but they were torn and dissolving from the acid. "Help me," she whispered. "Please." Jake did not think about the danger. He did not think about his limited air supply or the acid that would burn through his suit. He saw another human being who needed help, and that was all that mattered. He waded into the pool and felt the acid attack his boots immediately. The suit computer started screaming warnings, but he ignored them. The woman was too weak to climb out on her own. Jake grabbed her under the arms and pulled her toward the edge of the pool. The acid splashed on his gloves and started eating through the protective material. He could feel it burning his hands, but he did not let go. Step by step, he dragged her out of the death trap and onto solid ground. She collapsed as soon as they were safe. Her breathing was shallow and her skin was pale. Jake checked her for injuries and found chemical burns on her arms and legs. She needed medical attention and clean air. "What is your name?" Jake asked as he opened his medical kit. "Lisa," she said in a weak voice. "Lisa Kane. I am a botanist. I was studying the plants when my transport crashed." Jake looked around and did not see any other wreckage nearby. "Where is your ship?" "Over there," she pointed toward a hill covered In thorny plants, it exploded. I think I'm the only one who got out. Jake helped her sit up and gave her water from his emergency supply. She drank it slowly, and some color returned to her face. He used his medical supplies to treat her burns and wrapped them in clean bandages. "We need to find shelter," Jake said. "My suit is damaged and your injuries need attention." Lisa nodded and tried to stand. She was stronger than she looked but still needed his help to walk. They made their way through the poisonous landscape looking for somewhere safe. They found it half an hour later. It was the remains of an old research station that had been abandoned years ago. Part of the roof had collapsed, but one room was still sealed. Jake checked the atmosphere and found it was barely breathable but better than outside. They went inside and Jake sealed the door behind them. He took off his damaged helmet and breathed the stale air. It smelled like metal and old. Electronics, but it would not kill them. He helped Lisa sit down on an old chair and checked her wounds again. "Thank you," she said. "You saved my life." "You risk everything for a stranger," Jake shrugged. "It is what we do. Humans help each other. That is how we survive out here." Lisa studied his face in the dim light. "You are military." "Marine Corps, Corporal Jake Martinez. I was on patrol when our transport crashed." "Your squad?" Jake looked down at his hands. The acid had burned through his gloves and left red marks on his skin. "I think they are dead. I was the only one in the wreck when I woke up." Lisa reached out and touched his injured hand. Her touch was gentle, but there was something strange about it. For just a moment, Jake felt a tingling sensation like electricity. Then it was gone. "I am sorry," she said. "I know what it feels like to lose people you care about." They sat in silence for a while. Jake worked on repairing his communication equipment while Lisa rested. The research station had emergency supplies, including food and water. They would be able to survive for several days if necessary. As night fell outside the toxic swamps, Jake got his radio working. He sent out a distress signal with their location and settled down to wait for rescue. Lisa was sleeping in the corner wrapped in an emergency blanket. She looked small and fragile, but something about her made Jake think there was more to her story than she had told him. He had risked his life to save a stranger from the acid pool. It was the right thing to do, and he would do it again without question. But as he watched her sleep, Jake wondered who Lisa Kane really was and why she had been alone in the most dangerous part of the planet. Tomorrow, he would find out that some questions were better left unasked. Parameter: invoke greater than artifacts. I've written part 1 of the story in simple, basic English using third-person narrative style. The part is approximately 1,400 words and follows Jake Martinez as he survives a crash, rescues Lisa Kane from a toxic pool, and they find temporary shelter together. The story flows naturally without additional chapter breaks or numbered sections and maintains the HFY theme of human compassion and heroism. The writing uses straightforward language and sentence structure while building intrigue about Lisa's true identity and setting up the larger story to come.